I just want to just say, I suppose, first of all, let's go back. It's interesting to say what it is and what it isn't, I suppose. What performance enabling isn't is performance management. What it is performance. It's about performance. And particularly I'm going to talk to you about, although it's about, we have this scheme for all staff, I'm going to talk particularly about academic performance today. Just to say, I'm David Williams. I've been Director of HR in Swansea since 2003. I suppose it was interesting what Ewan was saying. You were saying earlier on about excellence and in his in the things about conflicts and balances and so on. Excellent. I noticed excellence and equality, and I guess I don't see anything in conflict with that. I suppose my two, as Terry was saying, my two interests have been over the last few years both equality and performance, and I don't see anything in conflict about that. Sian Cushion, I just wanted to mention Sian. She's not here today. She's done some of these with me, but Sian is one of my two deputies, and she came from the private sector. She worked in Marks and Spencer's. In fact, she developed with Stuart Rose for Stuart Rose their performance initiative in Marks and Spencer, which transformed Marks and Spencer's. She came into us in a completely different environment, adapted to the environment, and worked with us to develop what we have. So I would like to, even though she's not here today, I'd like to thank Sian very much for that. What I'm going to talk about is why did we need to change? Why did we bother? Well, a summary of our approach, what we did. Tell you a little bit about what performance enabling means to us and what it is in Swansea. A little bit about the work streams that we've got, and as I say, although I'm going to pick on two of the particular work streams that we did, it's actually about we had taken a very holistic approach in Swansea, and I'll explain a little bit about that. But the two things I'll talk about in a bit more detail are our key points of difference. And there's two things that's to do with development of performance indicators and to do with engagement that I'll talk to you about later in some detail. Talk about progress we've made in those areas and where we're going. So, why bother? Well, I guess don't suppose there's any university in the UK that hasn't been talking about performance. I mean, it's a hugely changing competitive world. The whole student fees thing, I think, has changed the environment overnight almost. I think within a matter of weeks over the summer, we all knew what the new fees regime meant. I think anybody who doesn't see students as customers anymore, anybody who doesn't see that we need to act very much in a competitive world, in a competitive environment, in order to attract students and to deliver the best student experience, is living in cloud cuckoo land. On top of that, we've got increased, those of us who are research-led universities, there's very much an increased REF expectation. REF is not the RAE, it's very different. You have to be either international or world leading to actually go in. Well, you can go into REF, but you won't if you are anything less than 3-star or 4 stars. It's termed. Then funding doesn't come your way. There's a hugely changing environment. The context for HE is as everybody knows, is changing. There are many more strands to what it means to be an academic. An academic, I don't think the old view of what it is to be an academic is relevant anymore. It might be for some, but generally not. How can you expect to be a global leading researcher and be brilliant at student experience and go out and engage with the community and deal with business? It's impossible. It has to be differentiation. It has to be some differentiation, and you have to recognise people for their achievements in their particular areas. Also, HR. I mean, I'm Director of HR at Swansea. Surely what we do in HR has to be relevant to the business, has to be relevant to the university's mission. So there was an aim there. And in terms of the university's mission, our aim in Swansea is very ambitious. It's to be a top 30 institution by 2017. So that's all about league tables, all about performance. If your staff that's essentially down to your staff. If your staff aren't performing, how are you going to do it? So performance enabling within the institution is seen as the delivery mechanism for staff for the strategic plan. In other words, you can't deliver your strategic plan without bringing your staff with you. So, as you probably picked up, it's quite a broad-ranging and radical approach that we've gone through. Can't do that without an intense process of engagement. We couldn't have achieved where we've got to already, and won't achieve where we're going in the future, unless we take everybody with us. HR has been proactive in trying to be inclusive. It's what Hewitt was saying earlier on about breaking down the barriers between professional staff and academic staff. And that's exactly what we've tried to do here. We've tried to not impose something on academic staff, but take them with us. So we've tried to establish a partnership. To do that, we conducted 180 sessions with trade unions, members of staff, senior managers, you name it, we did it. In some of the early sessions that we did, we did some group work, some focus groups and some presentations, which we all sat round a table like we're doing today, and those discussions were led by 3 or 4 of us, and in fact Alistair Work helped us with that from the Leadership Foundation. And we started with the sort of very poor scenarios we had for performance. And we took the appraisal form and said, we don't want that anymore. Okay, let's do away with that. Nobody likes it. It's completely superfluous. It's anachronistic. It doesn't do what we want it to do. Okay, let's rip it up. Let's not have it. Okay, what do we do? And it literally started like that. How do we? Let's rebuild what we've got from scratch. So those were part of the sessions we did, and then all of the information that we gained from those engagement sessions, we compiled, and we fed back into a strategy and a plan. So we were feeding back all the time what people had told us. Just to say, what do we mean by performance enabling in Swansea? Well, there's some key. It's very simple actually. It's about clarifying expectations. What is it that you're meant to do? Do you know what you're meant to do as a member of staff? Do you know what's expected of you in terms of the standard of performance? Do you know what good looks like? Do you know what bad looks like? What are the key? What is your contribution? Do you know what your contribution you should be making to organisational objectives and to the organisation in general? Do you know what it is? It's then providing the appropriate support, feedback, training, whatever is required to deliver that, to make sure that people can achieve the expectations and reach a good standard. It's also about removing the barriers to performance. I said we're taking a holistic approach. My view is that if people are stressed, if people are having interpersonal difficulties, if people are having problems with their home life, then those are things that are going to hinder performance. So you have to set up well-being networks and appropriate support facilities that allow people, where possible, to do that. And one of the things that we've set up as a result of that was a mediation service. We've had an internal mediation service, which is one of the things that we hope will assist. So the other thing is it's about reward and recognition. You have to make sure that that if people do what they want and do it well, that's recognised. I don't mean just in terms of money. I mean in terms of just some simple things like thank you. And those who are underperform are challenged. And it's that last bit, I suppose, if people talk about performance management, it's only that very last bit that is performance management. Everything else is about performance. So just to give you a quick view of what our work streams are, we have leadership development. It's Leadership Foundation Conference, so we would say that, wouldn't we? But it's been true. We have in fact run a number of workshop sessions for all our line managers, and I'll talk to you a little bit about even identifying our line managers and engaging our line managers later on. But we've run a number of workshops on a number of issues to do with leadership development, particularly to do with coaching and to do with dealing with difficult circumstances. Those are some of the things that people told us that they needed in order to handle those situations. We've developed an online professional development review system. It's in-house. I'll talk to you a little bit about that later on. We've developed KPIs, which is one of the key things that we've done, and I'll go into some detail on that. We've aligned it with REF. We've been conducting, at the same time as we've been developing the Performance Enabling Initiative, and indeed has been part of the Performance Enabling Initiative, we've been running mini REFs. In other words, looking at where, at the members of staff, academic members of staff's best 4 publications, and seeing which star category they might fall into. And we've been doing that within a framework of coaching and of challenge and of support. We've relied a lot on, we've also introduced a module evaluation system, which has given us student feedback, and we've incorporated that into our process too. We've made sure that the individual performance indicators that we've developed, which I'll talk to you about in a moment or two, are aligned with our business planning processes. So in other words, what are the indicators that show that indicators of success for Swansea University? How do we translate those into something meaningful at an individual level? Well, being a mediation, I talked a little bit about that. It's about removing the barriers. We've got a stream that deals with that. And reward and recognition, that is the focus of some current work we're doing, which I'll just speak a little bit about at the end if I've got time. So, to pick the 2 areas that I'd like to just focus on, which is, I suppose the reason I focused on is what we won the award for, is to do part of it's to do with the development of KPIs, to do with individual performance, measures of performance. And the other part is to do with how we achieved that, which is to do with engagement. So we developed our own online professional development and review process. And that enables academic staff and their reviewers to sit down together in a context. The information is actually included within the individual's professional development and review online form. So what happens is we've taken a number of databases to do with grant applications, grant income, student outcomes, to do with student feedback, to do with the number of PhD students that people have. And all of these are held in different databases in the university. And we brought those together within a single place, in other words, the online PDR form. That is an incredibly powerful thing to do. And we didn't realise the power of this until we did it, and we piloted it. One of the people who's involved in the pilot was a professor who has a very good research profile, well thought of. And he's looked at all of this, and he looked at his publications, and he looked at his research grant income and so on. He said, you know, my publications are fine. He said, I've got a good record of publications, and they're getting good star ratings. He said, but I looked at the grant income. I thought I could do better than that. And this is somebody who is well-renowned as a researcher in the organisation. He said to himself, I could do better than that. And there's no better, in my view, no better example of why this approach will work, because it allows people to challenge themselves. You don't have to do it for them. The good people will do better. And so what you can do as a result of having that form is have a meaningful conversation with all that information in one place. Even if it's wrong, frankly, it allows that discussion. And of course, once you've got that information, you can talk about where you would like to go next year. So you could say, well, this is where you are now. Let's look at your profile. Let's look at whether you're getting excellent results in terms of student feedback, get excellent results in terms of research performance. Let's talk about your career. Let's talk about where you go next. Let's develop some targets around that. This year, your student feedback was whatever it was, and let's say, can you perhaps do a bit better than that? And how is it going to do better? What can we provide with you to make you do better? So it provides that focused discussion. This is a big change. You can imagine, and if I thought at the start of this process I was going to get this into, never. Staff wouldn't accept it, unions wouldn't accept it. Just, it's not going to happen. The only way you can achieve this is by intense engagement, by bringing everybody with you. You cannot do it any other way. You can see in the second bullet point there, trade unions and staff were suspicious. I was suspicious. I thought, how are we going to get this through? But we just kept on. You can see with 86 sessions with 940 colleges. We went out to the colleges, we engaged them. We talked about it. And it was an interesting thing happened. I can tell you the point at which there was a tipping point in this. We started going out to colleges, and I think there was, I forget which college it was, Health and Human Sciences, I think it was. We started off with, I don't know, expecting about a dozen people to turn up. By the time we got there was about 100. And the discussion was extremely challenging. A lot of people against it. But then some people started speaking up and they said, hang on a minute, you know, I don't agree with this criticism of it. We need something, we need clarity. I want to be recognised for what I'm achieving. It's all very well, you know, people coming here, if they're not performing, then that's their problem. I want to be recognised for what I'm achieving. And so what you found happening was, as part of the engagement, people were coming on side and convincing others this is the right way to go. So we weren't making the arguments anymore. By the end, we weren't making the arguments. Other people were making them for us. Okay, so where have we got to? Well, we've talked about the meaningful discussion and developing an online system. We've done that, and it's successful. This is the second year of operation now, and we've refined it in the second year. We've introduced our KPIs, and we refined them this year. The module evaluation ones were tested in the first year, but were actually properly implemented this year, and that's been quite successful. One of the things that there's been a lot of spin-offs of this. One of the things we had to do, it sounds ridiculous, any other organisation in the university would laugh, but we had to identify the line managers. Nobody knew who the line managers were. It took us 13 weeks in one college to decide who the line managers were. Because how can you... so we've trained people, 98% of the senior line managers, we talked about the law, 70% of reviewers, and it's more than that now, actually. It was at that stage. 70% of reviewers have been trained in coaching and coaching approach. We believe a coaching approach is effective in this context. And people have told us that it is. Our record of PDR completion has rocketed. I mean, we were talking at best, I mean, it wasn't even measured, but it was around about 25% that were completed previously, and that's probably generous. In the first year that we did this, 79% were completed. This year, it's 90%. We're extremely proud of that. I think there are only something like 70-odd people in the entire university that haven't had a PDR. 100% of people in the Vice-Chancellor's department, that includes PVCs, have had a PDR. 100%. So I think that's a really important point, that you get engagement from the top. Better than that, 89% in year two, it was something like 50% in year one, 89% in year two believed that the quality of the review had improved. So it works. I mentioned the student feedback system earlier on, so I think what I'm trying to show here is that we've linked this to some of the key organisational objectives. What is it that students think? What is it that students feel? That is fed back in the PDR. The ref preparation is fed back in the PDR. So it's linked directly to what people want. An interesting side product of what we've done is that our information systems have improved. Immediately you bring data from central databases, which we had our module leaders, good example. Module leaders. We have had a system for recording who are the module leaders, who are the people on the modules. Nobody really cared. It's sort of a bureaucratic exercise. We don't need to know that. As soon as you start bringing this in professional development review into the form, and people are looking at it in their context before their review, they say that's wrong. So we set up a system of a central system, so that if you had a problem with anything to do with your form, there was one point of contact. You sent an email and it was corrected. We'd had something like 450 such emails in the first year, something like 380 last year, but we corrected the systems. Suddenly our databases are a lot better, our central management databases are a lot better, our management information is much better. So there's incredible benefits which we didn't expect from this. The other thing is, because of, I think, the engagement that we had no grievances, no formal complaints, and no trade union action. And we won the award. Okay, so where are we going next? Well, clearly we need this sustainable. Jane said earlier on, but it has to be sustainable. So it's about embedding, making sure it happens, making sure that at the heart of this is the PDR. I've talked about the PDR's performance a lot more, but I've talked about the PDR because that's where it starts. We have to make sure that the PDR is sustainable, because once you have the PDR and it's effective, you then can follow through. So we're going to introduce an interim PDR. We're going to link it to promotion. We're going to make sure, in the sense that the information that is collected in the PDR will be used and transferred to the promotion process. We're going to introduce a new academic career pathway scheme, trying to recognise some of the things I talked about earlier about the differentiation academic roles, and that will be done through the interim PDR in February to April this year. So the PDR is meaningful and it's sustainable. I talked a little bit about we need to develop. One of the key things that we need to do over the next year is to look at how recognition and reward relates to. So in other words, you're recognised for what you do or challenged if not. So we've done an awful lot of work on this. We've taken the same approach. We've gone out again and we've engaged with people. We've done dozens of engagement sessions with different groups of staff to say what it is that makes you feel recognised. What is it that makes you feel undervalued? What is it about reward? And actually it's really interesting. I talked to a bunch of professors and we had the two things, reward and recognition. We spoke for 90%, we discussed for 90% of the time, we talked about what made them feel recognised. At the end, we said, well, we haven't talked about reward. Oh yeah, we would all like to be paid more. And that was it. You know, so reward was not what was important, it's what they felt that they should be recognised for. And the trick is to try to produce something that isn't institutionalised, because nobody likes an institutional recognition, but something that's meaningful and individual, and that's about training and leadership development, and it's about emotional intelligence. So, brings me nicely on to further develop our leaders. Really interesting statistic. One of the statistics that we had in our, we did an evaluation form, which we asked various questions. And one of the questions that we asked was about whether people have been challenged on areas that they thought they should be challenged. 30% of people said that their line manager did not, in their review, did not challenge them on things that they expected to be challenged on. It's a really interesting statistic, because that means that people knew that they could have performed better, expected to be challenged on it, and weren't. And that's down to the capacity and ability of line managers to do those sort of things.